If you have ever searched for why Singapore separated from Malaysia, why Singapore left Malaysia, or the real story behind Singapore independence in 1965, you are in the right place. This is the full story of one of the most dramatic and misunderstood political separations in modern Asian history. The story of two nations, one impossible vision, and the man who wept on television the day his dream died. Stay with me because by the end of this video, the Singapore skyline will never look the same to you again. Two countries, one island, and one of the most dramatic political separations in modern Asian history. Most people who visit Singapore today see a gleaming, efficient, extraordinary city-state and assume it was always destined to be what it is. A nation built on ambition, precision, and an almost stubborn refusal to fail. What most people do not know is that Singapore was never supposed to be a country at all. It became one against its will. On the 9th of August 1965, Singapore was separated from Malaysia, not because it wanted to be, not because its leaders planned for it, but because the political situation between two visions of what a nation should be had become so irreconcilable that separation was the only option left on the table. And the man who announced that separation to his people wept on national television. That man was Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's first prime minister, and those tears were not performance. They were the genuine grief of a man who had fought with everything he had for a united Malaysia and lost. This is the story of why Singapore and Malaysia are two countries today. And it is one of the most consequential, most complicated, and most misunderstood stories in the history of Southeast Asia. To understand the separation, you have to understand what came before it. Singapore in the early 20th century was a British colonial port city. Strategically positioned at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, it was one of the most important trading hubs in Asia. The British built it, the British ran it, and the British, when they finally left behind a question that nobody had a clean answer to. What happens to Singapore now? Singapore alone was tiny, just 728 square kilometers. No natural resources, no agricultural land, no hinterland to speak of. As an independent nation, it seemed to almost everyone who looked at it in the early 1960s completely unviable. Lee Kuan Yew understood this, and his answer was merger. Merger with the Federation of Malaya, the larger Malay majority nation on the peninsula above it, along with the Borneo territories of Sabah and Sarawak, to form a new nation called Malaysia. On the 16th of September 1963, that merger happened. Malaysia was born. Singapore became one of its states. And almost immediately, everything started to fall apart. The tension at the heart of the Malaysia-Singapore relationship was not economic. It was not territorial. It was racial and political, and it ran so deep that no amount of negotiation could fully bridge it. Malaysia, as a federation, was built on a particular political philosophy. The idea that the Malay people, the Bumiputera, were the indigenous majority of the peninsula and deserved special rights, special protections, and political primacy within the new nation. This was enshrined in the Malaysian constitution. It was the foundational bargain of the federation. Singapore's population was majority Chinese, and Lee Kuan Yew's political party, the People's Action Party, operated on a fundamentally different philosophy. A philosophy of meritocracy, of multiracialism, of equal rights regardless of ethnicity. The idea that a Malaysian citizen was a Malaysian citizen, full stop, regardless of whether they were Malay, Chinese, Indian, or anything else. These two visions were not just politically different, they were structurally incompatible. And both sides knew it. The conflict escalated quickly, and it escalated in public. SJ Baby. Lee Kuan Yew took his multiracial message directly to the people of Malaya, campaigning in peninsular Malaysian constituencies under the banner of a Malaysian Malaysia. A Malaysia that belonged equally to all its citizens regardless of race. To the Malay political establishment in Kuala Lumpur, this was not just a political challenge. It was an existential threat to the foundational agreement on which Malaysia had been built. The United Malays National Organization, UMNO, which dominated the federal government, viewed Lee Kuan Yew's campaign as a direct assault on Malay political power. The rhetoric on both sides intensified. Racial tensions in the country rose to a level that genuinely alarmed both governments. There were fears, real fears, not hypothetical ones, of racial violence erupting between the Chinese and Malay communities. And in Kuala Lumpur, a decision was made. Separation was the only way to preserve the peace. Singapore had to go. On the 9th of August 1965, Lee Kuan Yew stood before the cameras and announced to the people of Singapore that their state had been separated from Malaysia. That Singapore was now, suddenly, unexpectedly and entirely without a plan, an independent nation. He could not finish the announcement without breaking down. He said, "For me, it is a moment of anguish because all my life I have believed in merger and the unity of these two territories." Those words carried the full weight of what had just happened. A man who had dedicated his political life to the idea of a united Malaysia was now standing in front of his people telling them that dream was over, that they were alone, that this tiny island with no resources, no water supply of its own, no army, no currency, and no economic plan for independence was now responsible for its own survival. The tears were real because the fear was real. What happened next is one of the great stories of modern nation building. Singapore, given no choice but to survive, proceeded to do exactly that. Lee Kuan Yew's government built an army from scratch, established a currency, developed a port and financial system that turned Singapore's geographic position into its greatest asset, invested in education, housing, and infrastructure at a pace and scale that transformed the island within a single generation. The country that had no right to exist by conventional measures became one of the wealthiest nations per capita on Earth, a global financial center, a model of urban planning, governance, and economic development that governments around the world still study today. Malaysia, for its part, built its own remarkable story. Its own economic development, its own cultural identity, its own place in the world. The two nations that could not share a political future found ways to maintain an economic and social relationship that, despite its tensions, has served both sides. They are connected still by the causeway, by trade, by family ties that cross that border every single day, by a shared history that neither country can fully tell without the other. But the question that history keeps asking is a simple one. What if it had worked? What if Lee Kuan Yew's vision of a Malaysian Malaysia, a nation where every citizen stood equal regardless of race, had prevailed? What if the merger had held? What if the political forces that tore it apart had found another way? Nobody knows the answer. History does not run the alternative scenario. What it does give us is two countries that emerged from that separation and built something extraordinary on either side of a 1.6-kilometer bridge. Two countries that, whatever their differences, share a story that neither fully owns alone. Singapore was separated from Malaysia on the 9th of August 1965. It was not a triumph. It was not a plan. It was a rupture. And from that rupture, one of the most remarkable nations in the history of the modern world was born. If this video gave you a piece of history you did not have before, hit like right now. Subscribe for more honest, deeply researched coverage of Asia's history, culture, and the stories that shaped this part of the world. Share this with someone who has been to Singapore or Malaysia and never knew the full story of how these two countries came to be. Because the skyline you see in Singapore today was built on the foundation of a separation that nobody wanted. And now you know why. We will see you in the next one.